If you're an independent artist and you write your own music, you probably have some money waiting for you in an account that you don't even realize is there. And if you don't claim it, it'll go to someone else. You see, most independent artists will write, record, produce their music, upload it to streaming platforms through a distributor, and eventually, one day, they finally get a royalty check from their distributor. And when they get that check, two thoughts usually go through their minds. The first one being, well, that's a lot less than I expected. And then the second one is, they assume that that's the correct amount of royalties that they're owed, or they think that their distributor is stealing from them, which is usually not the case. You see, in reality, you probably are owed more royalties, but it's not your distributor's responsibility to collect those royalties on your behalf. And that's where a music publishing administrator can help. Now, you may have heard of a company called Songtrust. They're a global digital rights management platform, and they make sure that songwriters and publishers get paid all the royalties that they're owed. And that's why I invited Noelle from Songtrust to join me here on the channel to explain how music royalties work and how you can get paid what you're owed. But before we get started, I just want to quickly remind you why you should subscribe to this channel if you aren't already. We don't know what we don't know. And what I mean by that is there are plenty of videos out there on the internet that answer just about any question that you can think of. But the first step to getting the right answer is knowing what questions to ask. I'm sure there are dozens, if not hundreds, of other videos on YouTube that will do a fantastic job of explaining what music publishing is and how music royalties work. But if you don't know to ask those questions, you're not going to ever find those answers. And that's what this channel is for. It's not just to answer questions that you might have about the music industry and promoting your music as an independent artist. It's also to help guide you and help you understand what questions you should be asking. So if you find this video helpful, please be sure to subscribe to the channel if you aren't already, and tick the little bell icon to be notified as soon as new videos like this one are released here on the channel. And do your friends a favor while you're at it. Don't just keep all this to yourself. If you know other songwriters, producers, musicians that could benefit from this stuff, be sure to share it with them as well. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in so you can be sure that you know how to collect all the royalty checks that you're owed. Hey, what's up guys? Justin from JamMob here, and I've got a really special guest with us here today. This is Noelle Gambuti. She manages the client acquisition team over at Songtrust, and she's here to tell us a little bit about what Songtrust is and why you as an artist or a songwriter should care about Songtrust. So just a quick, super quick synopsis. Songtrust is essentially music publishing administrator. So in a nutshell, what they do is if you are a songwriter or you own the rights to songs, they make sure you get paid. And I think in a nutshell, that's pretty much it, right, Noelle?
Yes, and we'll get more into it, but yeah, that I would say is a great elevator pitch.
Can you tell us just like a little bit more about why that's relevant to musicians, like why that's relevant to a songwriter, why they want to get well, why they need you guys, especially if they already have a distributor, right? Because distributors do pay royalties usually, but not all of them most of the time,
Yeah.
right?
And that's probably one of the most common questions that we get here is, I already have my distributor. They're paying me my streaming royalties. Like, I don't understand why I would need a publishing administrator like Songtrust. And basically at the baseline, what the most important thing to understand is the distributor is paying out completely separate royalties than Songtrust are. Those two royalties would never intersect because the distributor is paying out on the master recording side and Songtrust is paying out on the publishing or the composition side. That is synonymous, those two terms. But there are some distributors that also handle publishing. So it can get a little confusing because there is, CD Baby offers CD Baby Pro. And if you are opted into that, or let's say like TuneCore offers TuneCore Publishing Administration, you would be covered for both the master and the publishing collections for the songs that you have put through there.
Yeah.
But if your distributor is, simply distributing your music, you haven't opted into any sort of publishing add-on. Those are the two most popular, I would say. I can't think of any other off the top of my head. But then you do need to be working with a global publishing administrator to collect the publishing side of your royalties. And, the other option is getting a publishing deal, and whether that's something that you want for your career and that is, down the line, or, you don't want to give away your publishing rights and you always want to be in control. Songtrust is a great stepping stone because you're going to maintain your ownership. And even if you do want to get a traditional publishing deal down the line, you'll know more about what your catalog is worth because you've collected global publishing royalties in the past. So you won't just be going into, these negotiations blind and not knowing much about the worth of your catalog. You'll actually know a little bit more and have actually more negotiating power when discussing those. Or maybe you don't want to give up your publishing rights, and that is fine. I actually would recommend more, but in that case, you can, stick with an administrator like Songtrust that doesn't take ownership and is just, focusing on collecting the royalties that you're owed.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that is really can be kind of confusing for artists too now, like as we were briefly talking about before, is that I think because technology has gotten to a point, it used to be back in the day, like you had somebody that was managing all of this stuff for you, but now we're at a point now with technology not only allows you to write, record, and produce your own music from a laptop, as long as you have an internet connection, you can now distribute that as well. You don't need an intermediary. You don't need like a middleman. You don't need somebody to finance the project. You can just do it yourself. And I think a lot of artists are doing this now, and they don't fully understand all the rights that are involved. They don't understand, like it used to be back in the day, like 80s, 70s, earlier, beyond, and still today with pop stars, that you'll have a songwriter and then you have the artist that performs the song. But that's usually only in like country music and then like big pop stars with major labels. Right. A lot of independent artists are writing their own music, and they don't realize that they own two separate copyrights when they write and record their own music. And there's the copyright for the sound recording itself, and then there's a copyright for the underlying work, the actual musical composition. And because there's different copyrights, there's actually different royalties that are paid out. Exactly. And a lot of times with the distributor, as you were saying before, they'll pay the royalty on the for the sound recording, but not necessarily the royalties for having written the song, for the songwriting royalties. And right. there's two different types there. There's the mechanical royalty, and then also the performance yes. royalty as well.
Yeah. And I actually do have a good breakdown chart. Yeah. So as you were mentioning, with a lot of, independent artists having more accessibility to releasing their music on their own, it should always be in the back of their mind, what happens, if this song blows up, which I'm sure a lot of people would love for that to happen. And
that's the ideal.
Even if it,
that's the goal.
And even if it doesn't blow up, even if you're not getting a million streams, those streams that you are getting, whether they're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, you're owed money for those royalties. And that money is going through a lot of different pipelines. So it's okay if it seems confusing, because it is very confusing. But I just wanted to share this breakdown chart that I think is really much easier to follow when you're looking at it. So yeah, as Justin mentioned, there are the two copyrights within an original song. And if you are an independent artist who is writing and performing their own song, you would own both sides of this original song. You might split the ownership with some co-writers or, another performing artist that you worked with on the song, but you would own at least a portion of both sides of these. And on the master recording side, there is... let's see. Yeah. So this actually gives you a little bit better of a breakdown, because on the master recording side, you could see that the bulk of that master recording revenue is being collected by the distributor or your label, depending on, what your situation is. And then the digital performance royalties on the master side, which are just the royalties actually for non-interactive streaming. So free Pandora accounts, SiriusXM, internet radio, those are actually collected by Sound Exchange in the US. So you do need those two things on the master side. But there is a whole other side, which is what we focus on at Songtrust, which is the publishing side. And that then breaks down even further, as if it couldn't get more complicated, to both performance and mechanical royalties. So just to give a little bit of context on the publishing side, the performance and mechanical royalties are collected by separate organizations within the US. And that's just thinking from like a US centric mindset, right? Where you're releasing your music, it's, likely being released all around the world. You want to make sure that you're covered in the global scheme of things for collecting your royalties, which is really why working with a publisher, whether it's signing a traditional publishing deal down the line or handling it on your own with an administrator like Songtrust, is so important, because the royalties are collected at source. If your song is streamed in the UK, there are organizations in the UK that collect both performance and mechanical royalties. And by having your songs registered there through your publisher, that's how you can access those royalties, because then those societies know who to pay your royalties to. Otherwise, they're getting this usage data from Spotify, from Tidal, from Apple Music, and they can't find who to pay for your specific song if your songs aren't registered there. So that's long story short.
Okay. And so basically here you've got the two different copyrights. You've got the copyright for the sound recording itself, and then the copyright for the song. So the sound recording and the song. Your distributor, in most cases, is going to handle making sure you get the majority of your royalties for the sound recording streams. And then we could dissect, we get into sound exchange and all that as well. But for the sake of simplicity, we'll talk about just what happens on the publishing side of things. Is there are royalties that are also owned to the songwriter, who could be somebody completely different from the artist that's performing. So that's why it's important to register your music with Songtrust or a publishing administrator, because there are all types of ways that your music could be performed or streamed. It could be covered by somebody. And if somebody does a cover song of yours, they're legally entitled to do that. But if you don't have your song registered, you're probably not going to get a royalty on that.
Yes.
And that's what a mechanical royalty is, right?
It gets a little confusing because I think a lot of times people refer to mechanical royalties actually as master recording royalties. And things can get very blurry there. But the master recording revenue, there are royalties on that side, which are, just like the reproduction of your song. And that could also be the, physical sale or digital download. But for all those uses, the streams, physical sale, and digital downloads, those are all generating royalties on the publishing side as well.
Yeah.
And both performance and mechanical. Streaming goes to both performance and mechanical, whereas a physical sale or a digital download would just be on the mechanical side. So it does get a little bit more granular there. But I actually do have a slide that I could share where it's a breakdown of all the different things you need to do, which I think is great to come back to maybe at the end of
for sure.
These are the steps.
Yeah, the step-by-step stuff would be, I think, super helpful.
Okay. Do you want me to stop sharing then? And we can kind of go back, or do you think it'd be helpful to keep this up?
We could pull it down for now, and then we'll just go back up if we need to for demonstration purposes or anything like that.
Yeah, I'll just switch it to the creator checklist, and then when we're ready to talk about that, I could pull it up.
Okay, great. Okay, so Songtrust, as you mentioned before, you make sure that people get all their mechanical royalties as well as performance royalties, but then you have another entity called a performance rights organization, right? Where a lot of people, especially in the United States, in the United States, it would be ASCAP or BMI or CSAC, I guess, are the main ones. So if somebody's registered with a performance rights organization, they're only getting those performance royalties and not the mechanical royalties, right? That's correct.
Right. Okay. Yes. So the performance rights organizations only collect performance royalties. And even furthermore, they actually, performance royalties are split up into a writer's and a publisher's share. And for example, like with ASCAP, if you are affiliated at ASCAP as a songwriter / composer, but you're not affiliated there as a publisher, or you don't have a, publisher working on your behalf, you're actually only getting half of your performance royalties because you're only receiving your writer's share, not your publisher's share of your performance royalties. And then the mechanical royalties, which only consist of a publisher's share, you're just not getting any of those. And by working with a publishing administrator like Songtrust, you actually can be sure that your songs are not only registered at your PRO to collect the writers and the publisher's share there, and the mechanical organizations in your country, but globally we work with over 60 different performance and mechanical societies, digital licensing agencies, and collection organizations. So you can be covered, globally for your publishing royalty collection.
So if somebody registers their music with you guys, do they also need to register it with PRO?
They don't.
No.
So as long as we're affiliated with their PRO, which more often than not, we are affiliated with the PRO that the client is with, we will be registering the songs there on their behalf.
So like if a songwriter were to register with ASCAP, for example, and then they sign up for you with you guys, like they need to be registered with that performance rights organization. But every time they release a song or every time they write a new song, they don't have to register it with them. They just register with you guys and you make sure that it's registered with everyone.
Yes, exactly. And we can actually affiliate our clients with a PRO on their behalf because they have to be. So you have to be affiliated with a PRO as a songwriter or composer to have your songs registered on your behalf. You would get your IPI number from your PRO, which is, your basically your songwriter ID number. And that number is tied to each one of your song registrations. And your publisher uses that IPI number to register your works, not just with your PRO, but with the global societies as well. So if someone comes to us, and they aren't with a PRO yet, we can submit their PRO application on their behalf. If they're in the US, they can be affiliated with either ASCAP or BMI. If they're in Canada, they would have the option of SOCAN, which is the PRO there. And then we do have an option for, anyone who lives anywhere, which is IMRO. And they are based in Ireland, but they accept PRO applications from, anyone in the world. And there's, that's no additional fee. It has to be done. So we can do that on songwriters' behalfs if they don't have it set up already.
So if you're a songwriter and you're watching this and it's super confusing, then basically they could register with you guys. You can register with, just sign up with Songtrust and they help walk you through the process of making sure that you're registered to get all of your royalties that you're owed as a songwriter.
Yes. Yep.
Or the owner of a song.
Right. Or the owner of a song. We have, all different types of clients. They could be producers, songwriters, artists that write their own music, but it could also be, publishing companies, labels that have publishing contracts with their clients, who are administering their work for them, and want to make sure that they're getting that full global collection on behalf of their clients. So anyone, who owns a portion of a song or is, managing a catalog of someone who has ownership of songs.
All right. So the publisher can just register with you as well and handle all of their administrative publishing administration through you guys.
Yeah. And the benefit of that is really with, they don't have to go and individually affiliate their publishing company with all the societies where their client's music is being used. That could be very costly. It can take a very long time. So in the same value proposition that exists for a songwriter or creator, all you have to do is register your song once in the Songtrust portal, and we send that registration out to all the societies and collection organizations that we're affiliated with, which is over 60 now. So a lot. It's over 250 countries. It was 225, but I'm pretty sure it's 250 now. I should probably check that number, but it's either 225 or 250, and that's the number of countries.
It sounds like you make it super easy to make sure the artist gets all their royalties. What about copyrights? Now, when somebody writes a new song, they will register it with you guys. Do they still have to go and register the copyright with their National Copyright Office, or is that something that you would help with as well?
So if they want to do that, it is something they have to do on their own, because the copyright owner would have to be the one to do that. It doesn't, allow, it has nothing to do with royalties, essentially, registering that copyright at the US Copyright Office, for example, but it does provide that extra layer of protection where if your, song did get stolen, it would hold up in court. That being said, global registration with a publisher does provide a level of ownership, proof of ownership, I mean.
Yeah.
And what I always recommend, especially with people that are collaborating a lot, is always filling out a split sheet for each song that you are collaborating on, even if you're not sure if it's going to be released. And I know it's not like the most exciting thing to bring up when you're like in the studio, if you're like hanging out with friends and writing a song, but I have talked to so many different creators who wish that they had done that at the time, and the song ends up blowing up and they can't reach anyone. They don't know what their split is, and they're losing out on royalties just like as the days go by. So it is really important, and having that split sheet could then, if a conflict does arise at a society where people are registering songs differently, having that split sheet that everyone agreed to and signed, providing that to the society, you can then claim at least your share and be sure that you're collecting what you should be collecting.
Yeah, because that's one of those things that most artists don't do, especially if you're collaborating, unless you're a professional, like a real professional, and you're making money. But a lot of times when artists are, just working on an album with their friends or their first album with their bandmates or whatever, you work on a song together and they don't even think about, who contributed what percentage, and they don't want to talk about it. And it's just, in a lot of cases, I think it may be something that's uncomfortable to broach, like, okay, well, who did this much? We're all just friends. We'll all split it equally until the checks start coming in. And then it can be, then it gets really complicated. And it's one of those things where it's super easy to do in the beginning, but once that money starts coming in, all of a sudden it's a big problem. And I think,
and it is hard to split up the money once it starts coming in, which is why it's just better to kind of have it settled, before the song is released. So that way, when the song is released, everyone can confidently either, whether they're handling their publishing on their own and just registering with their PRO or registering the song with Songtrust, they can all confidently go into their portal, register the song with the same splits, and then there are no issues down the line. Because, when people are claiming different shares and things aren't adding up, that will delay royalties a lot. And in the world of publishing, royalties are already very delayed, like from the time a song gets streamed to the time, that money makes it to the songwriter is, I would say, anywhere from like 6 to 12 months. So it's, you don't want to delay that process any longer.
It already has to go, in a lot of cases, through multiple hands.
Exactly.
Before it gets from, point A to point B.
Yeah.
So what about if, an artist, they're just learning about this for the first time, maybe they've released a couple of albums already through DistroKid to their distributor, or through, DistroKid or CD Baby to Spotify and Apple Music. They're getting their streaming royalties. They just discovered for the first time that they're owed songwriting royalties. Is that something that you guys could help them collect still, even if, if they haven't registered their music with you yet?
Yes. So typically back royalties, which are also known as like retroactive royalties, are held onto for about 2 to 3 years at the societies. That is an average timeline. So, nothing is really promised, but we typically can, see royalties from about 2 to 3 years looking back. A lot of times that can be discouraging to people, but my recommendation is usually, it can't hurt to try. If you're going to get started with Songtrust, why not register all the songs that you have released? And if there are royalties out there that are still uncollected for you, we'll collect them and get them to you. And then you'll also be set up for the future royalties that are generated on any songs that you've registered with us. So I know it can be a little discouraging to, just learn about this and feel like, oh, like I all this money could have gone to someone else, or it could have gone, just been lost in the system. But it really can't hurt just to check. And the way to check is by registering your songs with Songtrust. And we'll go ahead, check with all our sources, see if they have any back royalties for you, and then make sure you're set up to collect those future royalties also.
And what kind of fees are involved? I mean, obviously, I would imagine you guys aren't doing this for free, right? So
we wish we could.
It sounds like a lot of work. So
so administration is no easy task. Definitely not an easy one. But we have a one-time sign-up fee of $100. And that basically covers registering unlimited songs. And your account would be open for life, essentially, unless you decided to cancel. And we have 15% administrative fee. And that is of the royalties that we collect on your behalf. So that doesn't include your writer share. We're not dipping into anything on the master side. Obviously, it's any royalties that we're collecting for you. And that is the publisher share of your performance royalties and your publisher mechanicals.
So what about song placement? When somebody registers their music with you, they're a songwriter, they've registered their songs with you. Do you guys at any time offer a service maybe where you might pitch those songs to recording artists that might perform those, or to, maybe be used for film or television or anything like that? Or do you strictly just make sure that the royalties are collected and paid to the songwriter?
Exactly. So we strictly, handle the administrative stuff. We don't provide any creative services, and we don't take any ownership of the publishing. So whatever our clients want to do with their music in terms of, working with a sync house or a licensing agency, pitching their music on their own, or, using their own networks to figure that out is really up to them. We're not gonna, pretend like we're experts at everything,
Yeah.
but we are experts in administration, and we'll make sure that you get your royalties for what the uses of your music are. But we aren't providing creative services, and our clients maintain 100% ownership, so they can handle that on their own.
Okay, cool. So, I guess a really common question that I get asked a lot, especially from artists that are discovering for the first time, that there are other royalties involved besides just uploading your music through your distributor and like getting those royalties, and that there's such a thing as copyrights and all of these different complicated things.
Yeah.
And there's all these different organizations that they could be signing up with, besides just their distributor. There's also performance rights organizations, as we mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
There's the music publishing, as you said. So can you give us like maybe like what? Okay, so the common question that I get all the time is, what do I do first? Like, when I write a song, and do I need to register it with my copyright office or?
Yeah. So I think this will be helpful, just like as I'm going through it. I would say in order, the things that you should do. And if you've already started, your music career and you're doing these out of order, it's okay. As long as you're getting everything in motion and getting everything figured out, that's totally fine. But if you were, starting from scratch, my recommendation would be to affiliate yourself with a collection society. So that would be like a performing rights organization like ASCAP or BMI. There are ones in each country. So if you want to be affiliated with your local one, I'm sure that you have one. So by being affiliated there, you can make sure that you and your songs can be found for royalty payout. And then my next recommendation, and these two are kind of interchangeable. I guess it's, really depending on how ready you are to release music. But I would say distribution would be next, because we don't really recommend registering songs through Songtrust until they're released, because there's not, much point, and we wouldn't have all the data to register it anyway. So when you release your songs with your distributor, I think distributors are actually doing this a bit different now, but whether it's before or on the day of the release, it'll be assigned what's called an ISRC code, which is the International Standard Recording Code. And each, sound recording is assigned one, and you need that code to register it with your publisher. So I would say once you've released your music, your next step is to register with a publishing administrator like Songtrust. You would then be able to register your songs through Songtrust. We register it at your PRO and all the collection organizations that we work with. And then around the same time, I would say to sign up with Sound Exchange as well. They collect the digital performance royalties in the US, which are specifically non-interactive streaming royalties.
Because as you mentioned before, since you potentially could collect royalties for up to maybe a year or two before somebody registers their song with you guys, that for that reason, it's not necessary to register the song before it's even distributed. Like as soon when it's distributed, they get assigned the ISRC code, which a lot of times I think most distributors, if you could upload your music to a distributor prior to the release date and actually get that ISRC code sooner. Right. But it's really probably better just to it's not necessary, I guess, in other words, to register prior to actually releasing the song. They just need to make sure that first they're affiliated with a PRO, that they then can go ahead and distribute their song, at which point they want to make sure to register it also with their publishing administrator, which might be Songtrust, and also with Sound Exchange, so they can get those other royalties that we talked about that might not necessarily be paid out through their distributor. And then if they want to register it with a copyright office, or that's kind of an optional thing. It's an extra layer of legal protection, but it's not required at all for royalties.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that really helps to break it down. Hopefully this makes a lot of sense for people that are kind of discovering for the first time that they actually might have other royalties waiting for them.
I hope this helps. I know, like I said, it could seem like a lot, especially if you are hearing about it for the first time, but we do have a lot of resources on our website. We have the split sheet template that I mentioned earlier, royalty checklists, what I just shared. We have like a downloadable version on our website if you want to like download it, and if you want to like check off the points, if that is satisfying to you. we have tons of webinars and stuff as well. So it might seem intimidating, but it really is necessary to, be aware of the royalties that you're collecting, and make sure that it's everything. Because if you're not collecting them, they will go to someone else, unfortunately, and those will be the top artists, just quite frankly. So if you want your royalties to go to you, just keep that in mind.
Yeah, and there's, as Noelle mentioned, there's at the Songtrust website, there are all those resources, as well as some webinars on like music publishing 101 and various really important educational things. So if you're still like really confused about how music publishing works and what royalties you might be owed, that's probably something worth checking out. And also I'll link to that stuff in the video description so you guys can register for the next publishing webinar.
Yeah, those are super helpful. They're live on Zoom. Right now we're doing them twice a week since everyone's at home and pretty eager to be on virtual events. So, whenever you want to join one, they're interactive. They have like a real host. So nothing automated. And you can, ask questions at the end, because even if you have sat through multiple Music Publishing 101 webinars, things can still be confusing. And I'm still learning new stuff about publishing all the time. So
it can be, yeah, it's a whole other world. And I think it's very good to have somebody administering that for you. That's definitely something that artists don't want to be doing themselves, I'm sure.
Yeah. And they could have more time to focus on what they actually want to be focusing on, writing music and being creative and collaborating with all different kinds of people. So then they could focus on that and not worry about the administrative side.
All right. Well, do you have any last things that you think maybe we haven't touched on yet, but that artists or new songwriters tend to ask, or that we should maybe clarify that you can think of? We
I think we pretty much covered all the basics. Yeah, I wouldn't want to get into anything like too complex, because a lot of times that just like brings up a lot more questions. And I don't want to leave people confused. I want to leave them feeling confident that they know what they need to know.
Done that. I think you've really, I think, helped shed the light on some things that are really confusing and maybe a little overwhelming for artists that are just, trying to get started. They're managing themselves. They don't have a label or a manager to do all this stuff for them. So I really,
and you don't need a team these days. Like you said, you can write and release a whole album from your basement, and you could make sure you're collecting the publishing from your basement as well. So you don't need a team. You just have to, know the right resources to help you along the way. So you can definitely do it on your own.
Awesome. So yep, go check out songtrust.com. Thank you so much, Noelle. I really appreciate your time here today. And yeah,
thanks for having me.
I'll send some people your way, I'm sure. So
cool. We'll be happy to have you all.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, Noelle.
All right, that's going to wrap things up. If you found this video helpful, please be sure to let me know in the comment section and give it a thumbs up. And just a quick reminder why you should subscribe to this channel. We don't know what we don't know. I'm not just here to answer your questions about the music industry, I'm also here to help you understand what questions you should be asking. So make sure that you're subscribed and tick the little bell icon to be notified as soon as new videos are released here on the channel. Share this video with other songwriters, producers, and musicians you might know that you feel might get something out of it. And don't forget to check the resources in the video description. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.